Tonight, road upgrades in the Spencer Gulf take a step forward towards beginning, and prawn fishers return to Port Lincoln with this year's Christmas catch.
With the latest from around the region, your nightly news with John Hunt begins now.
Good evening. Regional road upgrades across the Spencer Gulf will begin next year, with the initial assessment of highways now complete. A boost in federal funds has helped fast-track key projects.
A common sight on our peninsula's roads, trucks carting grain on the busy highways. But with the harvest season almost complete, the trucks will soon move on and the bulldozers will roll in.
The first of the works are about to begin. There's passing lanes to be put in place between Whyalla and Port Augusta.
It's the first development in a long list of upgrades set to make regional roads safer, with $32 million in state funding being made available.
It's a matter of determining where that $32 million is best spent.
The federal government has also dug deep, announcing last month a $400 million investment to fast-track South Australia's road projects, a quarter of that going towards rural roads.
I'm a big fan of shoulder sealing. I think that widens the road. It inherently makes the road safer, and we're also looking at passing lanes.
The upgrades are set to pave the way in making our roads safer, with 14 overtaking lanes and 700 kilometres of shoulder sealing planned.
The closer we get to Port Lincoln, being the export terminal, the more likely we are to need roadworks.
Our committee is very conscious of any modifications in the city, because that's where all of the trucks finally end up.
And it's also hoped T-Port's new Lock and Lucky Bay facility will help alleviate traffic.
And that will have some impact on traffic flow down our highway from the north.
Nathan Regter, 7 Spencer Gulf News.
It's business as usual for Whyalla's Harris Scarf, despite going into receivership. The retail chain went into voluntary administration yesterday, putting the future of 1,000 workers at risk. The Whyalla store has been running for over 20 years. Company receiver Deloitte are intending to sell the business. Trading hours will continue as normal over the Christmas period, with gift cards and lay-by deposits being honoured in full. The Federal Education Minister has praised the Upper Spencer Gulf region for its tertiary study options. Port Pirie's Uni Hub is now recruiting local students who want to pursue their studies regional.
For regional students, university once meant moving hundreds of kilometres away. Now Upper Spencer Gulf graduates are able to study from the comfort of their own hometown.
Once they have their completion of that, their higher education course, the chances of gaining gainful employment are greatly increased.
A recent report by the Federal Education Department has discovered regional areas are lacking in tertiary options. Students are forced to move to the city to pursue their studies. But the Upper Spencer Gulf is reversing that trend, hosting one of 16 regional uni hubs.
We are unique in South Australia in the way that ours is a supported education base.
The initiative is aimed at keeping young people in the area, preparing the next generation for jobs.
A lot of times going forward, our youngsters have got to leave the area to go to get tertiary education and they don't come back. So by having our uni hubs in Port Augusta soon to open, and also ours, it is just fantastic.
And university isn't just for high school graduates, with options for matured age students also available.
A lot of older people that are reskilling themselves, and a lot of that we need to do as well with some of the developments that we've got coming up into the future.
Shari Hams, 7 Spencer Gulf News.
A draft public policy set to go out on public display has caused confusion at last night's Broken Hill Council meeting. It was the last gathering of the city's councillors for 2019, with a regional-led programme also voted on.
A policy sent back to the drawing board. At last night's monthly meeting, one item on the agenda was the draft regional art gallery policy, but councillors Kennedy and Allgate expressed concerns on wording of some guidelines.
I think there was some confusion by some of the councillors about, that council were going to go out and purchase artworks, where the reality is that we've never put funds in the budget to do that, so you can't just go out unless there's budgeted.
After much discussion, councillors voted to rewrite parts of the policy to improve understanding of it. The General Manager disappointed.
From my perspective, a real storm in a teacup, and I think, quite unfortunate that we got to where we got to in terms of not being able to get that out on public exhibition.
Mr Ronkin did have some good news for residents on Brown Street. The road sealing works are tracking well.
A primer seal, and that's going down over the next couple of days, so that work should be completed. The first pass of that and the seal should be completed by the end of this week.
A mayoral minute calling for further state funding for a citywide lead program was passed unanimously. Patrick Reinke, 7 Spencer Gulf News.
Still to come tonight, we take a look at this year's Prawn Haul in Port Lincoln. And an iconic Broken Hill show gets state government funding. Welcome back. Port Lincoln's prawn boats have arrived back in town this week, offloading their final catch for the year. The produce hitting the shelves at the local shops, with customers already snapping them up.
The seafood capital producing the goods once again. Crews offloading their final delivery of prawns just in time for Christmas.
We always believe the Spencer Gulf produces a high quality prawn because of the cool waters and the way it's managed by this crew.
More than 400 tonnes of prawns across the Spencer Gulf have been caught this season. They've been cooked and packaged on board, bound for local markets.
All our pre-Christmas product will be going domestically around Australia, so I think if you look into your local retail stores and supermarkets, you'll find our product there.
Some difficult conditions on the water hampered fishing efforts, but crews say they're happy with the stocks.
We had a few nights of rough weather, so the guys had a couple of nights off, which is always important to look after the crew, but otherwise they had some great fishing conditions.
The first box of many being delivered to the local suppliers.
Today we have the prawn fleet, 39 boats all unloading their December prawns for Christmas, and they should be just delicious.
But prawns aren't the only good catches. Southern Rock lobster is also proving popular, but it won't come cheap at $160 per kilo.
We'll have abundance of lobster, be a pretty high price I think at this stage the way the market's going, so there'll be a bit around whether people can afford it.
Nathan Regter, 7 Spencer Gulf News.
Looks good. While as Edward John Eyre High School held an industry breakfast this morning. Teachers say it was an opportunity for students to learn more about future job opportunities in our region.
Reminiscing on a hard year of work, industry members discussed career choices with local students at a breakfast this morning.
We're really keen to see industry working much closer with schools and providing opportunities for young people to get jobs.
Our students get an opportunity to do work experience with them. They also have the opportunity then to build the relationships with the employer.
With 19 training programs on offer, the school encourages students to choose a pathway offering work in the region.
It's really important that young people can see there's a future in the local region rather than feeling that they've got to move interstate.
And they're not the only ones benefiting from the program.
Many employers have skills shortages, so working closely with the schools helps employers to find a pipeline of young workers into their industry.
I had to partake in a 2-week vocational placement at Copper House Court where I got to work alongside care workers.
The team at Edward John Eyre have been working closely with industry and TAFE SA to provide practical opportunities for the students, a stepping stone into what could be a possible career option.
This program has been pretty important to my future. It sort of set me up for life.
Sophia Contagonis, 7 Spencer Gulf News.
A 39-year-old Ardrossan man has lost his licence after being caught driving nearly 50 k's over the speed limit at Maitland on the York Peninsula yesterday afternoon. Police detected the motorist driving 147 k's in a 100 zone just after 1 o'clock. The driver was issued with an expiation notice and an instant 6-month loss of licence. Police say they'll continue to amp up roadside operations and are warning motorists to drive carefully this festive season. A Broken Hill Heritage Theatre show, providing insight into the city's union history, has received state government funding. The production team says the money will take the show to the next level.
A call to get behind the union movement.
We are to ourselves and all them who come behind us in the future to stand and fight for the rights of the workers, for a fairer, safer workplace and a decent day's pay for our efforts.
United We Stand is a weekly performance for the passengers on board the Great Southern Rail. It gives viewers a snapshot into the 1919 union meeting which led to the Great Strike that lasted 18 months. An historic standoff between the city's mine workers and its companies.
Those early strikes in Broken Hill paved the way for the conditions that people all over the world enjoy today. And, to be able to honour that in this way is a really special thing.
After 2 years and almost 2,000 people entertained, it's received a state heritage grant worth $50,000.
We're looking to have some costume ageing workshops and some prop making workshops and we'd love to, the more people that get on board, the bigger and better it's going to be.
The money will also go toward expanding the performance to incorporate the 1909 lockout, mock graves and more about unionisation.
The history of Broken Hill is incredible, and I didn't even know the extent of the history until I started doing this show.
Jason says augmented reality postcards featuring scenes from United We Stand are also in the works.
Use this as a bit of a proof of concept to see if we can't get more funding to develop some narrative drama and film and television content.
Patrick Reinke, 7 Spencer Gulf News.
Stay with us. We look back at the year that was in Port Augusta, and Wyler's Road Safety Centre gets an upgrade. Welcome back. Time now to review the year that was in Port Augusta. 2019 was an exciting time for the city, with a number of changes taking place. Laura Miller-Vanovic sat down with the member for Stewart, Dan Van Holst-Pelican.
So Dan Van Holst-Pelican, thanks so much for meeting with me. So 2019's been a big year for Port Augusta. What have been some of the highlights?
Look, there have been a lot of highlights this year. I mean, perhaps from a school's perspective, we've had schools that have achieved some pretty outstanding things in Port Augusta this year. So that's very positive for the students, for the families, for the teachers, and of course for the future of Port Augusta. Some employment opportunities, very important. The development of the Carapatina mine, a huge opportunity for Port Augusta. The Lincoln Gap Wind Farm, another really important employment opportunity for Port Augusta and the surrounding region, and more of those to come next year.
So now back in April we saw that Solar Reserve pulled out of the solar plant project, but there is hope for the future, is that right?
Lots and lots of us, including local community people and industry and government, all worked hard to get the Solar Reserve proposal up. It was very sad in April when Solar Reserve came to me as the Minister and to the government and said that the company could not deliver on the commitment that it had made. But we've had very good news recently that South Australian company 1414 Degrees wants to pick that project up and see if they can deliver it.
So there's been some major changes on our coastline this year. I mean, firstly, the East Side Mill Jetty was demolished, and then the West Side Bridge has been shut off, and obviously the massive Joy-Ballore Bridge duplication is underway at the moment. What other changes have we seen around the city?
Oh, we've actually seen some real positives. I mean, we're looking at Flinders Power actually contributing to the Rotary Park on the west side of town. Everybody who drives past Central Oval, every day now we see the very significant upgrade to the surface of the oval there.
So it's a topic close to many people in the city. The fate of the City Safe Canine program is at risk. How do you see us moving forward without this program?
For many years it's had a contract, the City Safe contract, and I know that council, state government and federal government will all work very collaboratively to see what's the best outcome with regard to the City Safe service moving into the future.
So Port Augusta has hopped on board the smoke-free train at the jail this year. How have you seen this affect the site?
This is something that's been coming for a long time. Everybody would agree in principle that it's the right direction. It's just about making it work in practice on the site.
And finally, what are you most looking forward to for 2020 in Port Augusta?
2019 has been a year of challenges, but we have a really, really strong, bright future here.
Thank you so much for meeting with me, and I wish you a very Merry Christmas and a happy and healthy New Year.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. It's been lovely to have you come to Port Augusta, be connected to the region with family in Whyalla and friends here in Port Augusta and Port Pirie. You've made a great contribution already, and I really look forward to what you can offer all of us in Port Augusta through 2020.
Thank you.
New clean-up signs have been installed on Port Broughton's foreshore. They've been designed by local kindergarten children who've been learning about keeping the environment clean. The initiative comes as Barunga West Council prepare for Clean Up Australia Day in 2020 by offering a free dumping service to those who participate in the event.
Free dumping of the rubbish that they clean up. And so certainly in that way we're supporting the Clean Up Australia Day by accepting all the rubbish bags that they are able to collect and bring in.
More information on the event will be released in the new year. 2.5 years of tireless fundraising has finally paid off for the Whyalla Road Safety Centre. An $80,000 upgrade to its riding track is nearing completion, helping improve the conditions for its users.
A depleted track finally undergoing a well overdue upgrade.
A lot of cracks and stones coming up through it, and as a result the little kids finding it hard to ride on it.
West Coast Bitumen have been contracted to resurface the track, which opened in 1978. To raise funds for the improvements, the group had to get creative.
We just haven't been able to find the resources to get the money, so then we started having 2 yearly markets, and that's helped income.
The worn-out surface, usually prone to bumps and scrapes, will now be first class.
We have had occasions where the training wheels or the small wheels get caught in the tracks and tip the bikes.
New bitumen and signage are currently being put in, with new line marking to be added early next year.
We've got local sponsors on board, we've got some money from the state government, and the rest of it we've just accumulated through parties and doing school lessons.
With learning experiences and birthday parties popular events here at the centre, volunteer staff are hoping the children enjoy the smooth track, set to be completed on the weekend.
I certainly hope so for this Saturday.
Sophia Contagonis, 7 Spencer Gulf News.
Stay with us. Our fishing experts take a look at what's biting in the Gulf, and we'll have the weather details with Britt. Hello again. Crystal Brook residents are gearing up for their annual street party tomorrow evening, with festivities kicking off at 5 p.m. Father Christmas is set to arrive at 6:30, and there'll also be food, train rides and live music. Both Bowman Street and Adelaide Square, adjacent to Ayr Road, will be closed from 4 o'clock onwards. Port Pirie Council is advising those travelling through the area to take note of the closures. Time now to check on what's biting out on Spencer Gulf waters this weekend. For the final time this year, here's our fishing experts with their tips.
G'day and welcome to this week's fishing tips from Port Augusta, Jaw of the North. Well, the weather's been a bit here and there at the moment, a lot of wind, so with that get out and chase the silver whiting on the high tide such we've got this morning along the beaches down on the shacks, and also the low tides out in those middle banks around the Flinders Channel. Lots and lots of crabs around at the moment. You have to pick through the size of them. They're fairly full of meat, but don't take the small ones there. A few snook around Port Patterson, and also some salmon getting caught on the troll. Plus there are some kingfish still kicking around as well. So wishing everyone a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and that's all we have from the Jaw of the North.
Welcome another week around the Gulf Fishing Tips. It's unbelievable at the moment. This weather's just been balmy as anything. It hasn't brought in our yellowfin whiting to the full capacity yet, but you still will get a feed. So chase the shallows from Marina Island up to Mambro Creek. You might be able to find a nice feed of fish. We've seen some blue swimmer crabs still rolling in. They're still hard, but hard to get as well. So work a little bit harder. Don't burley anything when you're doing it. And I reckon that if you looked around, we should be able to find some really nice fish in the gutter over by Eastern Shoal.
G'day and welcome to Fishing Tips in Port Lincoln. Well, the big news over the past week has been a little patch of tuna that's been floating around in the bay. So there have been a couple of fish caught from that patch. There's been some kingfish of mixed sizes. Also in the bay there's been some nice whiting down around in the proper. Moving over to Coffin Bay, there's been some good whiting in the bay system as well, especially out towards the leases, and there's been some snook in the bay, and also Farm Beach has been fishing pretty well for whiting. Well, that's all for fishing tips this week. Wishing everyone happy fishing over the Christmas period, and we'll see you all again with fishing tips in 2020.
And with the latest on the weather, here's Britt.
Good evening. Well, it's been a mostly fine day with maximums ranging from the late teens into the late 20s. Broken Hill reached 29 degrees, Port Pirie 28, Port Augusta 27, Whyalla and Adelaide both 25, Port Lincoln 18. From the satellite, thick cloud over the north of the region near a low pressure trough, with patchy cloud to the south with onshore winds but remaining dry. Looking ahead now to tomorrow, southeasterly winds on the Gulf waters tending to the southwest at 15 to 20 knots, seas up to 2 metres. And it's looking a little sunnier than today. Starting from the top, Woodna expected to reach 30 degrees, Corn and Broken Hill 29, Port Augusta 27, Port Pirie 26, Clare and Kadina 25, Whyalla and Cleve 24, Adelaide 23, Coffin Bay 22, Port Lincoln 19. Moving on to the weekend, partly cloudy at Port Lincoln both Saturday and Sunday with a sunny start to the new week. Cleve fine and 27 on Saturday, Sunday sunny and 34. Woodna looking warm and sunny across the weekend. Sunny days ahead for Whyalla and Port Augusta, the latter expected to reach 41 degrees on Monday. Kadina fine across the weekend. Port Pirie and Clare both looking sunny over the coming days, warming up with expected tops of 34 on Sunday. Broken Hill bright and sunny, 33 on Saturday, 37 on Sunday. And John, that's the Thursday weather.
Thanks, Britt. And that's the local news this Thursday evening. Thanks for joining us. I'll have updates later in the evening. We'll leave you now with a look at Christmas lights in Port Augusta. On behalf of the team, it's good night.